chosen one. Pause right here. This is not another video, not another voice passing through your day. This moment has weight. You felt it before you understood it. Something in your spirit reacted faster than your logic. And that is how you know this is real. This is the Thursday you cannot ignore. Heaven is not whispering randomly, it is calling you by precision. Pay attention now. Don't rush past this. Don't minimize it. What is approaching has already been authorized. You have noticed the shift. The atmosphere around you feels tighter, heavier, more focused. Ordinary days no longer feel ordinary. Your rest hasn't been deep, yet your awareness has been sharp. That is not anxiety, it is anticipation. When something appointed draws near, your spirit wakes up first. God always alerts his chosen ones before movement begins. He never moves suddenly without first stirring the inner man. This Thursday is not symbolic, it is strategic. A line is being drawn between what was and what will be. You are approaching a moment where certain doors will only open once, and delay will not pause them. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to sober you. Destiny does not shout. It waits for recognition. And right now, heaven is watching to see if you discern the time. Think back over your life. How many times were you almost taken out? How many seasons did you endure that others never saw? You carried weight without explanation. You fought battles you couldn't talk about. You stayed standing while silently breaking. That endurance was not wasted. God does not train people accidentally. Pressure is never random when purpose is involved. You may have wondered why things slowed down just when you were ready to move, why plans stalled, why clarity delayed. It was not denial, it was alignment. God often slows the external pace when something major is being arranged internally. Speed without structure would have destroyed you, so he protected you from arriving too early. This Thursday marks a transition from containment to movement, from preparation to positioning, from silence to signal. You are not stepping into chaos, you are stepping into order. Divine order, the kind that rearranges priorities, relationships, and direction without asking permission. That is why this feels unsettling and holy at the same time. This divine order does not arrive gently. It interrupts habits, reshapes schedules, and challenges loyalties you once thought were permanent. What used to feel stable may suddenly feel misaligned. This is not loss, it is recalibration. God is not dismantling your life. He is realigning it so what comes next does not collapse you. You may notice decisions becoming clearer but heavier. The ease of indecision fades, replaced by an inner insistence to choose correctly. That pressure is not condemnation, it is clarity forming. Divine order brings responsibility with revelation. When God orders your steps, excuses dissolve and accountability rises to meet calling. This is why peace and discomfort coexist right now. Your spirit recognizes truth while your flesh resists change. Holy order always feels disruptive before it feels secure. But once alignment locks in, momentum follows quickly. What feels unsettled now will soon feel inevitable. God's order always proves itself after obedience, as the apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. What no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. This is not exaggeration, it is limitation language. God is saying your imagination is not equipped to preview what he has prepared. That is why anxiety tries to creep in, because the mind cannot map what the spirit already senses. This Thursday is not about proving yourself. It is about trusting what God has been building quietly. You were not meant to understand everything before you move. You were meant to obey while understanding catches up later. Faith always walks ahead of clarity. Always. Notice how certain distractions have lost their appeal. How noise irritates you now. How shallow conversations drain you. That is discernment sharpening. God reduces your tolerance for what doesn't match where you're going. You are not becoming distant, you are becoming focused. And focus is expensive. It costs comfort, it costs familiarity, but it unlocks authority. Do not talk yourself out of this moment. Do not tell yourself you're overthinking. You are not. You are discerning. This message found you because your spirit was listening even when your mouth was silent. Heaven does not waste revelation on those who won't carry it. Before you move forward, mark this moment. If this word is bearing witness inside you, respond in faith. Like this message so it remains active. Share it with someone who is also sensing the shift. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you stay aligned with what God is releasing in this season. And in the comments, write 777 as a prophetic marker not for people, but as a signal before God that you recognize divine timing and you are ready to walk with it. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are not imagining this. Thursday is approaching, and heaven has already made its move. You were marked before birth, and that mark has been speaking long before you had language to explain it. Even as a child, you sensed you were different, not better different. You noticed things others overlooked. You felt deeply, questioned early, and carried a seriousness that didn't match your age. That wasn't heaviness. It was awareness. God placed something inside you that matured faster because it needed to survive pressure early. Selection often announces itself as isolation first. You tried, at times, to blend in. You learned how to be quiet about what you saw, how to soften what you felt, how to shrink parts of yourself so others would be comfortable. But no matter how much you adjusted, something always set you apart. People misunderstood your silence as distance, your depth as intensity, your discernment as judgment. Yet even when rejected, you were protected, and even when overlooked, you were preserved. That is the paradox of being chosen hidden in plain sight, guarded by God while misunderstood by people. Your life didn't follow a straight line, and that confused you. Detours appeared without explanation. Doors closed suddenly. Relationships ended without clarity. You questioned whether you missed something, whether you failed somewhere along the way. But heaven never questioned you, Takar. God never scrambled to fix your story. What looked like disruption was design. You were being kept from paths that would have diluted your calling before it matured. There were moments you felt too much responsibility too early. You carried emotional weight that wasn't yours. You became strong before you became safe. That was not because God rushed you, but because your environment required early resilience. Chosen ones are often trained in survival before assignment. Strength comes first, clarity later. If God had explained everything at the beginning, you might have resisted the process. So He allowed you to grow into understanding. Even now, you sometimes wrestle with identity. Not because you don't know who you are, but because who you are hasn't always been welcomed. You learn to question yourself because others questioned you. You learn to doubt your instincts because people couldn't follow your perspective. But the mark never left. It simply waited for the right season to speak louder than insecurity. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. That statement is not sentimental. It is legal language, known, formed, set apart. In that order, God knew you before your shape existed. Your assignment preceded your body. Your calling came before your context. That means nothing about your life has been reactionary. Heaven was never adjusting plans because of human interference. Everything unfolded within allowance. Being set apart does not mean being elevated early. It means being reserved, protected from exposure before readiness. That is why some opportunities passed you by. That is why applause didn't come when you expected it. God hides what he values until it can withstand visibility. Premature recognition would have cost you your future. So he let you grow quietly, away from noise, away from comparison. Reservation felt like rejection, but it was preservation. God withheld platforms because exposure magnifies fractures. Silence was stitching you together. Delay was reinforcing your spine. While others burned fast and faded, you learned how to last, how to carry weight without cracking, how to remain steady when attention finally arrives. Being hidden trained your discernment. You learned when to speak, when to wait, when to walk away. Obscurity protected your motives from corruption. By the time doors open, you will not need validation to stand firm, because identity was forged without applause, watching you grow strong before responsibility demanded it. You may have envied others who seemed to advance faster, be noticed sooner, succeed with less effort. But speed is not favor. Sustainability is. God builds foundations in secret for those he intends to place weight upon later. You are not late, you are layered. Every season added something necessary: discernment, endurance, humility, restraint. This mark also explains why compromise never sat well with you. You could pretend for a while, but something inside always resisted lowering the standard. Even when no one was watching, you felt accountable. That wasn't fear, it was alignment. Your spirit recognizes its origin. You belong to God in a way that makes certain paths impossible, no matter how attractive they look. There is relief coming with this understanding. You don't have to fight your difference anymore. You don't have to apologize for depth, for boundaries, for conviction. What once felt like isolation will soon make sense as preparation. The mark that made you feel alone is the same mark that will position you with clarity when others are confused. You were not an afterthought. You were not a mistake. You were not shaped by accident. You were known. You were formed. You were set apart. And everything that follows will begin to align with that truth. The pressure you lived under was not random, and it was not cruelty. It was confirmation. You were not being crushed. You were being compressed. There is a difference, and your survival proves it. Crushing destroys structure. Compression strengthens it. God applies pressure only where there is value to be released. Oil does not come from fruit left untouched. It comes from olives that endure weight, resistance, and force until what was hidden begins to flow. Think back to the seasons when everything felt tight. Time felt short. Resources felt limited. Support felt thin. You were required to make decisions with incomplete information, to keep moving without reassurance, to trust God without visible evidence. That pressure taught you how to listen inwardly instead of relying on external validation. It taught you how to stand when applause disappeared. That training is rare, and it is intentional. You may have asked God why it had to be so hard, why ease seemed to visit others while you wrestled through resistance, why simple things demanded so much effort. But pressure reveals structure. It exposes weaknesses early so they don't collapse later. God would rather confront cracks in private than let them destroy you in public. What felt unfair was actually merciful. There were moments you nearly gave up, not dramatically, but quietly. You didn't quit out loud. You quit internally for a while. You went through motions without expectation. You prayed without emotion. You obeyed without enthusiasm. And still, God stayed close. He never withdrew because your faith wavered. He watched how you moved under weight. Heaven pays attention to how chosen ones behave when nothing is happening. Pressure refined your discernment. You learned the difference between urgency and importance. You learned when to wait instead of react. You learned that not every open door is God, and not every closed door is opposition. That wisdom does not come from comfort. It comes from endurance, and endurance produces authority. You also learned empathy. Suffering softened you without weakening you. You can now recognize pain in others without being consumed by it. You can stand with people without losing yourself. That balance is rare. Leaders without pressure become arrogant. Leaders without pain become dangerous. God allowed pressure to keep your heart usable. There were times you felt stretched beyond capacity. You carried responsibility that didn't match your title. You solved problems you didn't create. You stayed accountable while others escaped consequences. That imbalance taught you stewardship. You learned how to manage weight without recognition. That skill is essential for what's coming, because what God is about to entrust you with will require maturity before visibility. The pressure also stripped illusions. You stopped romanticizing certain dreams when you realized their cost. You stopped idolizing people once you saw their limitations. You stopped expecting humans to be saviors. That disillusionment was not bitterness, it was clarity. God removed false support so you would lean fully on Him. The Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Notice the language, working for us, not against us, and pressure is productive when God supervises it. What felt heavy was building capacity for something heavier. Glory has weight, and weak structures cannot hold it. Pressure did not come to break you, it came to reinforce you. God allowed weight to test your structure, not your worth. Every heavy season strengthened joints you didn't know you'd need. Endurance widened your capacity. Silence stabilized your foundation. What once felt unbearable trained you to carry responsibility without collapsing. Now, when glory rests on you, it will not crush you. You were built quietly to hold what many desire but few could sustain. This is why the pressure increased right before movement. Resistance intensifies near release. Opposition grows louder when breakthrough is close. Darkness does not fight what has no future. It resists what threatens it. The fact that you endured proves you were built correctly. If pressure were meant to stop you, it would have succeeded by now. You are emerging with something precious: internal stability. You are no longer driven by panic. You don't need constant reassurance. You can wait without anxiety. That calm is dangerous to chaos. It means you cannot be easily manipulated. And people who cannot be rushed cannot be controlled. This section is not about glorifying suffering. It is about redeeming it. God never wastes pain. He converts it into wisdom, discernment, patience, and strength. You are not behind because it took longer. You are fortified. Before you move forward, respond not for me, but for yourself. In the comments, write, "I stayed standing." This is not a slogan, it is a declaration. Writing it forces acknowledgement. It honors the version of you that didn't quit when quitting felt logical. It seals the truth that pressure did not defeat you, it developed you. What comes next will make sense of what came before. The pressure was a sign, and the release is near. Heaven has been watching closely, even when it felt like silence surrounded you. There were seasons when prayers seemed to echo without response, when obedience felt unnoticed, when doing the right thing produced no immediate reward. But absence of evidence was never evidence of absence. God does his most meticulous work where applause cannot interfere. Surveillance does not require noise. Attention does not require interruption. While you questioned whether anything mattered, heaven was recording everything. You were seen in moments no one else witnessed. The restraint you showed when retaliation would have been justified, and the integrity you maintained when compromise would have been easier. The tears you wiped away before facing the day. The battles you fought internally without ever making them public. Heaven does not overlook quiet victories. In fact, they carry more weight than visible ones. What is done without witnesses is often what God values most. You may have assumed that because nothing changed externally, nothing was happening internally. But heaven measures growth differently. God watches roots before he watches fruit. He observes motives before movements. He weighs faithfulness before fruitfulness. While others were rewarded quickly, you were being evaluated deeply. Speed impresses people. Depth impresses God. There were delays that confused you. You wondered why justice took so long, why certain situations were allowed to linger, why answers felt postponed. But delay is not denial, it is discernment. God waits until the full picture is clear, until every heart is revealed, until every motive surfaces. Heaven does not rush judgment because God sees outcomes humans cannot predict. What feels slow to you is precise to him. You are also protected without knowing it. There were things you wanted that would have harmed you. Doors you knocked on that never opened because God saw what was behind them. Conversations that never happened because timing wasn't right. Relationships that faded because their assignment expired. Protection often looks like disappointment at first. Only later do you realize how much trouble you were spared. Heaven watched how you handled disappointment, not just whether you stayed faithful, but how your heart responded. Did bitterness take root? Or did humility deepen? Did resentment grow? Or did wisdom increase? These are the details heaven records. God is not just preparing you for blessing, he is preparing blessing for you. And blessing must trust the vessel it enters. There were moments you felt exposed emotionally, spiritually thin, unsure if you had the strength to continue. Yet somehow, you did. Not because you were strong, but because grace sustained you. Heaven saw every time you chose to get up anyway. Every time you prayed without feeling. Every time you showed up while exhausted. That consistency is not overlooked. It is accumulated. You may not realize how often God intervened quietly, adjusting outcomes, softening consequences, or redirecting harm, limiting damage. Heaven is active even when invisible. Angels are assigned without announcement. Favor moves without sound. Mercy interrupts without explanation. The spiritual realm does not need validation from the natural realm to function. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 56, verse 8. You have kept count of my wanderings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? This is not metaphorical sentiment, it is spiritual accounting. God records tears. He counts wanderings. He documents what you thought was wasted pain. Nothing you endured was meaningless. Nothing slipped through unnoticed. If it touched you, heaven logged it. Heaven's record is exact, not emotional. Every unseen sacrifice was measured. Every restrained response weighed. God does not estimate, he accounts. What you thought vanished into silence was archived in eternity, preserved until the moment it could be answered with precision, not impulse. This is why outcomes will feel sudden but fair. Heaven does not improvise justice, it executes it. When God moves, it is never reactionary. It is the release of long-held records finally authorized to manifest in time, exactly when readiness and righteousness meet. This truth reframes everything. It means your suffering was not ignored, your patience was not pointless, your obedience was not forgotten. Heaven is not indifferent, it is attentive. God does not miss details. He does not overlook patterns. He does not forget promises. When the time comes to act, He moves with full knowledge, not partial awareness. You are approaching a moment where what was observed in secret begins to influence outcomes in public. Heaven rewards openly what was endured quietly. The accounting is complete. The evidence is sufficient. God never rushes vindication, but He never misses it either. Timing is part of justice. This also means some things will shift suddenly, not because God changed His mind, but because conditions have finally aligned. What felt stalled was actually waiting for the right convergence. When heaven moves, it often appears abrupt to humans because the preparation happened invisibly. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not unseen. You have been watched carefully, evaluated fairly, and preserved intentionally. What comes next will not be random. It will be the result of everything heaven has already recorded. Darkness resisted you hard because what you carry is disruptive, not decorative. If your presence were insignificant, opposition would have ignored you. Resistance is never random, it is reactive. It rises in response to threat. And long before you understood your assignment, the unseen realm recognized it. That is why battles appeared early. That is why confusion tried to shadow clarity. That is why fatigue followed you even when you were doing the right things. You were never fighting ordinary resistance. You were contending with awareness. You may have wondered why certain cycles repeated. Why, as soon as progress began, pressure intensified. Why peace felt interrupted just as momentum formed. That pattern wasn't punishment, it was interception. Darkness attempts to slow what it cannot stop. It tries to distract what it cannot destroy. It introduces delay, doubt, and division where destiny is forming. And yet you are still here. That alone testifies that resistance failed. Opposition targeted your mind before it touched your circumstances. Thoughts questioned your worth. Doubt blurred your discernment. Weariness whispered that it wasn't worth it. That is strategic. Darkness aims for internal collapse before external defeat. But you learned something critical in those moments. Thoughts are not commands. Feelings are not authority. You learned to stand even when confidence wavered. That skill will matter more than talent where you're going. You were resisted because your obedience carries consequence. Your yes disrupts systems. Your alignment exposes imbalance. Your presence shifts atmospheres without announcement. That kind of influence doesn't need a microphone, it operates by nature. And darkness fears what it cannot predict. It cannot manipulate someone who answers to God alone. Notice how opposition changed forms over time. When fear didn't work, distraction tried. When distraction failed, fatigue followed. When fatigue didn't stop you, isolation was introduced. This progression reveals intelligence, but it also reveals limitation. Every tactic exhausted itself. Nothing succeeded long-term. You adapted, you matured, you grew quieter, steadier, more discerning. Resistance refined you. There were moments you thought the fight meant you were off course. But storms don't chase parked ships. Resistance follows movement, and even when you paused, the assignment didn't. God allowed friction to sharpen you, not slow you. Steel becomes lethal through repeated heat and pressure. So does calling. Darkness also resisted you because of who is connected to you. Your obedience does not end with you. It unlocks others. It creates pathways. It establishes permission. That makes your life a strategic target. But hear this clearly: God never assigns responsibility without providing covering. You were never exposed. You were trained under fire. Because your life functions as a gateway, resistance tracked you early. What God places in you authorizes movement in others. When you obey, ceilings lift for families, communities, and generations you may never meet. That makes your journey contested, but covering always preceded calling. God shielded you while sharpening you. Fire never consumed you. It instructed you. You were not targeted to be destroyed, but trained to stand as proof that assignment survives opposition and still advances purpose. As the ancient words recorded in Romans chapter 8, verse 31 still echo today. If God is for us, who can be against us? That is not a question seeking an answer. It is a declaration of hierarchy. Opposition exists, but it is not ultimate. Resistance is loud, but it is not sovereign. God's authority outranks every attempt to delay what He has approved. This is why you must stop interpreting resistance as rejection. Stop assuming difficulty means disqualification. Sometimes resistance is the clearest confirmation that you are exactly where you should be. Darkness does not waste resources fighting irrelevant people. It responds to threat, to what's arriving now will make past resistance make sense. You will see why it couldn't be easy, why it couldn't be rushed, why you couldn't arrive untested. Systems don't collapse from soft impact. They shift when something weighty enters. You are weightier than you realize. As you listen to this, if it resonates, take a moment to engage, not out of obligation, but out of alignment. Liking this message helps keep it visible to those who are also navigating resistance without language for it. Sharing it may answer someone's silent question. Subscribing keeps you connected to this unfolding flow, not as a follower of a channel, but as part of a community learning discernment together. This isn't about numbers, it's about stewardship of truth. You have survived opposition without losing compassion. You have endured resistance without becoming hardened. That balance is rare. Many emerge bitter. You emerged clearer. That clarity will soon be required publicly. What once tried to silence you will soon have to adjust around you. Do not fear resistance ahead. Expect it to weaken. Darkness grows loud before it loses ground. Its intensity signals its awareness that time is short. You are stepping into a phase where opposition cannot operate the same way. You have discernment now. You have boundaries. You have authority. The resistance was real. The threat was recognized, and the victory was always assumed. What darkness resisted, heaven endorsed, and what heaven endorses will stand. This is your point of no return, not because God is impatient, but because growth has reached a threshold where going back would require denial of truth. Thursday represents a line not drawn in fear, but in clarity. Up to now, grace allowed hesitation, mercy allowed delay. But there comes a moment when light increases, and with increased light comes responsibility. You are standing at that moment now. You can feel it internally. Certain options no longer feel neutral. Choices that once seemed harmless now carry weight. What you tolerate today shapes who you become tomorrow. God is not threatening you. He is trusting you with awareness. Conviction is not condemnation. Conviction is evidence that God still sees you as capable of alignment. There is a reason the path behind you feels uncomfortable to revisit. It's not because it was evil, but because it was temporary. Seasons expire, assignments shift. What once sustained you cannot support your next level. This is why nostalgia feels heavy instead of sweet. Your spirit has already moved forward, even if your circumstances haven't caught up yet. This point of no return is not dramatic on the outside. There may be no announcement, no sign in the sky, no immediate change in routine. But internally something locks in. A decision settles. An excuse loses credibility. You stop negotiating with what God has already made clear. Obedience becomes simpler, not easier, but simpler. You may be tempted to delay a little longer, to wait for perfect condition, to hope for more confirmation. But clarity does not always increase with time. Sometimes it fades if ignored. God speaks once, then waits to see what you do with it. Silence after instruction is not absence, it is expectation. This is where many people retreat. Not because they are rebellious, but because obedience requires surrender of control. Saying yes to God means releasing the illusion that you can manage outcomes. It means trusting His character more than your calculations. That is why this moment feels intense. Control is expensive to give up. You are not being asked to understand everything. You are being asked to choose alignment over comfort. Comfort preserves the present. Alignment prepares the future. And the future God is inviting you into cannot be accessed with yesterday's compromises intact. There is also urgency here, not panic, but precision. Windows open and close. Timing matters. Delayed obedience is still disobedience when clarity has been given. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. God can correct a moving person. He does not steer someone committed to standing still. You have already sensed the consequences of saying no. Not punishment, but narrowing. When you resist alignment, peace thins, joy dulls, momentum stalls. Life feels louder but less meaningful. That is not God withdrawing love, it is God allowing you to feel the cost of misalignment so you can choose differently. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. This is not coercion, it is clarity. God presents options and honors choice, but He also reveals outcomes. Choosing life is choosing alignment, even when it costs you comfort today. This point of no return is also a point of empowerment. When you choose alignment, heaven backs the decision. Strength meets obedience. Resources follow surrender. Clarity sharpens once commitment is made. Many are waiting for confidence before they decide. But confidence comes after decision, not before. You are not alone at this line. God does not abandon people at crossroads. He stands close, not to force you, but to support you once you step forward. Grace does not disappear after obedience, it multiplies. What changes is tolerance for delay. God loves you too much to let you stagnate once readiness has arrived. You may lose certain things by moving forward. Some relationships will not come with you. Some habits will be left behind. Some versions of yourself will have to die. But loss in obedience is never wasted. God replaces what is surrendered with what is required for the next assignment. This is not about proving loyalty. It is about protecting your future. The longer you stay at the line, the heavier indecision becomes. But once you step across, momentum carries you. God designed obedience to activate movement. Before you continue, Mark this decision in a simple but intentional way. In the comments, type 111. This number represents alignment, spirit, soul, and direction coming into agreement. Writing it is not superstition. It is a signal of consciousness. It says, I recognize this moment and I choose alignment over retreat. It anchors awareness and interrupts indecision. Do not underestimate what acknowledging a moment does internally. Choices gain power when they are named. Heaven honors decisions made with clarity. You are not being rushed. You are being invited. This is your point of no return, not because you can't go back, but because you finally see why you shouldn't. The silent preparation phase is ending, and with it, the protection that comes from being unseen. For a long time, your growth happened quietly. You learned without spotlight. You matured without applause. You built strength where no one could interfere. That season was not small, it was sacred. But seasons are not permanent. What is trained in private is eventually summoned into visibility. You were taught things you could not have learned publicly. Discernment sharpened without pressure to perform. Character formed without comparison. Faith deepened without the temptation to impress. Silence insulated you from noise while God calibrated your inner compass. You learned to hear Him without external confirmation, which means you will not be easily swayed when many voices surround you later. This preparation phase required restraint. You held back words you were ready to speak. You waited through opportunities that looked good but felt premature. You watched others advance while you stayed hidden. That waiting was not passivity, it was discipline. God was teaching you how to carry potential without leaking it too soon. Premature release can spoil what is meant to mature fully. There were moments you questioned whether the silence meant disqualification, whether being overlooked meant being forgotten. But God does not confuse quiet with absence. He often speaks most clearly when everything else is muted. Silence is not empty. It is intentional space where formation happens without interruption. You are being trained to value obedience over visibility, to recognize that calling is not proven by exposure, but by faithfulness. That lesson is critical, because once visibility comes, distractions multiply. Approval tempts, criticism distracts, expectations pressure. Without a strong internal anchor, public seasons can dismantle what private seasons built. God ensured your anchor was set first. The end of silent preparation does not mean noise immediately follows. It means transition begins. Signals appear, invitations surface. Conversations shift. Your name enters rooms you haven't walked into yet. You may feel both excitement and grief, excitement for what's coming, grief for what's ending. That mix is normal. Leaving hiddenness means releasing a form of safety, but safety is not the same as security. God remains your security even when comfort changes. You will notice a change in how people respond to you. Some will suddenly see what they overlooked. Others will resist the shift. Familiar dynamics may feel strained. This is not because you changed, but because growth alters alignment. When you outgrow a season, staying quiet becomes dishonest. God does not promote performance, He promotes readiness. You were also trained in endurance. Long stretches without feedback taught you how to keep going without affirmation. That ability will protect you later when opinions fluctuate. Public seasons are unstable. Praise rises and falls. Criticism comes without warning. But someone who learned consistency in obscurity is not easily shaken by reaction. The silent phase ending also means accountability increases. When God elevates visibility, He tightens responsibility. You will be held to what you know. Ignorance will no longer excuse disobedience. This is not burden, it is trust. God does not increase exposure without increasing grace. He knows what He invested in you, as was spoken in the sacred texts of old, recorded in the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 2. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. This wisdom guarded you in silence and will protect you in visibility. God ensured you did not need to announce yourself. He prepared others to recognize you when the time is right. You may feel unready, but readiness is not absence of fear. It is presence of obedience. You have already demonstrated the ability to stay aligned without reward. That is rare. Most people require applause to continue. You learned how to continue without it. That strength is now transferable into public responsibility. That endurance without applause became your qualification. You learned to obey when no one affirmed you, to stay consistent when progress felt invisible. This trained you to serve purpose instead of praise. Now, as responsibility increases, that discipline will protect you. Visibility will not distract you, and pressure will not corrupt you, because obedience, not recognition, has always been your anchor. Do not rush this transition. Let it unfold. God is intentional with exposure. He will not release you into spaces that would devour you. He will position you where your preparation fits the demand. You are not stepping into chaos, you are stepping into congruence. The silent season did its work. It taught you patience, humility, discernment, and restraint. It shaped your identity so that when recognition arrives, it will not define you. You will know who you are before others decide who you should be. You are not losing privacy, you are gaining purpose. You are not leaving safety, you are entering stewardship. You are not being pushed, you are being released. The training is complete. The preparation is sufficient. And what was formed in silence is ready to stand in the open without breaking. Old doors will close suddenly, and the speed of those closures may unsettle you. What once felt reliable may end without explanation. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Opportunities you assumed were stable disappear overnight. This is not chaos, it is decisiveness. God does not slowly dismantle what has expired. When a season is complete, He closes it cleanly to prevent you from lingering in what no longer serves your calling. You may feel tempted to reopen what God has shut, to seek closure, clarification, or comfort from what is familiar. But familiarity is often the greatest competitor to obedience. God closes doors firmly because partial closure invites negotiation, and negotiation delays alignment. What is ending does not require your agreement, it requires your release. These closures will feel personal. Even when they are not, people may withdraw, environments may shift, systems you depended on may stop supporting you. This is not punishment, it is repositioning. God removes scaffolding once a structure can stand on its own. Continued support would keep you dependent on what you have already outgrown. You might grieve these endings. That grief is valid. Not every closed door was toxic. Some were simply temporary. God does not deny the value of what once helped you. He honors it by ending it at the right time. Staying too long in a good thing can still prevent you from stepping into a God thing. There will be moments you question whether you misheard God because the closures feel abrupt, but sudden does not mean careless. Heaven moves suddenly because preparation has already been completed behind the scenes. When God closes a door, He has already accounted for the transition, even if you cannot see the replacement yet. You are being protected from regression. Old doors often lead to old patterns. Comfort pulls you backward subtly. God is not just guiding you forward, He is blocking return paths. This ensures momentum. You cannot fulfill a future assignment while continually revisiting expired versions of yourself. Some doors will close in the form of loss, financial shifts, role changes, social distance, identity disruption. You may feel ungrounded for a moment. That is because God is removing false anchors so He can become your primary one. When everything else shifts, your dependence on Him deepens. This is also a test of trust. Will you chase what closed, or will you watch for what opens? God often closes doors before opening new ones so that movement is driven by faith, not convenience. You are being trained to walk forward without guarantees, guided by conviction rather than comfort. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 13. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. The narrow path often begins with loss of options. Fewer doors do not mean less favor, they mean clearer direction. God simplifies choices when destiny requires focus. Do not measure these closures by emotion alone. Measure them by alignment. Ask not what feels familiar, but what fits where God is taking you. Some doors close because they cannot support the weight of your next assignment. Staying would have required compromise later. God saves you from future regret by enforcing present separation. Alignment often feels quieter than emotion, but it is far more reliable. Emotions react to loss. Alignment responds to direction. When God closes a door, He is not asking how it feels, He is securing where you are headed. What fits your future matters more than what comforts your memory. Some structures collapse because they were never built to hold expansion. They served you at one scale, but your calling has grown heavier. God prevents future compromise by removing present access. What feels like loss is actually load management, ensuring you do not break under responsibility you are about to carry. Separation now saves explanation later. God knows what conversations you would have had to justify staying, what boundaries you would have blurred to remain, so He closes the door Himself. This is not harshness, it is care. He is guarding your integrity before pressure tests it publicly. You will also discover that not everyone celebrates your forward movement. Some prefer the version of you that needed them. Closed doors sometimes reveal hidden dependencies. God disrupts those to establish maturity. Independence from people strengthens dependence on Him. In time, you will recognize mercy in these endings. You will see how staying would have cost you peace, clarity, or integrity. What feels abrupt now will later feel necessary. God does not remove without intention. He subtracts to make room. You are not being stripped. You are being streamlined. You are not losing. You are being liberated. You are not abandoned. You are being advanced. Allow the doors to close without force. Do not linger at thresholds. Trust the hand that shut them. God closes what you are no longer meant to carry so you can arrive lighter, clearer, and ready for what opens next. Your name is being called aloud now, even if you still feel unprepared to answer. This calling is not coming from ambition or self-promotion. It is emerging because authority recognizes readiness before confidence does. God never waits for you to feel qualified. He waits until you are formed enough to respond without losing yourself. And that moment has arrived. For a long time, your work spoke quietly. Your faithfulness operated in the background. You contributed without needing credit. But heaven has a way of amplifying what has proven consistent. When God decides to speak your name, it is not for flattery, it is for function. Being called aloud means responsibility is increasing. It means what you carry can no longer remain hidden because others now need it. This can feel unsettling. Exposure brings pressure. Visibility invites scrutiny. You may fear being misunderstood, misrepresented, or measured unfairly. Those fears are not weakness, they are awareness. But remember, God does not reveal what He has not already reinforced. He would not call your name publicly if your foundation were fragile. You are not being summoned because you are perfect. You are being summoned because you are dependable. Heaven values reliability over charisma. You showed up when it was inconvenient. You stayed aligned when it was costly. You chose integrity when shortcuts were available. That record speaks louder than talent ever could. There is also grief mixed into this moment. Being called forward often means leaving behind anonymity. Some freedoms disappear. Some relationships change. Some misunderstandings increase. You will not be able to explain everything to everyone. When God elevates assignment, He reduces explanation. Clarity becomes internal before it becomes public. You may notice people projecting expectations onto you now. Some will assume strength means availability. Others will assume wisdom means agreement. Discernment will be essential. Being called does not mean being accessible to all. Jesus Himself withdrew often, even while crowds called His name. Visibility must be managed, or it becomes a burden instead of a platform. This calling is also corrective. God is not only calling you forward, He is calling you out of hesitation. Silence was appropriate before. Now, silence would be disobedience. What you once protected must now be stewarded openly. This requires courage, not loudness. Authority does not need volume, it needs alignment. You might feel like others are more prepared, more articulate, more experienced. But comparison is irrelevant at this level. God does not call the most impressive, He calls the most aligned. He chooses vessels that will not hijack purpose for ego. Your humility qualified you more than you know, as was spoken in the sacred writings of Isaiah. Chapter 43. Verse 1, I have called you by your name. You are mine. This calling is personal, not performative. God does not summon you to impress others. He calls you because you belong to Him. And belonging precedes assignment. When God claims you publicly, He also defends you publicly. Being called aloud means accountability increases. You will be held to what you know. You will be refined in how you speak, how you act, how you respond. But grace increases alongside responsibility. God never exposes without empowering. What He calls forth, He sustains. Accountability does not arrive to restrict you, it arrives to refine you. God sharpens language, motives, and reactions because influence multiplies impact. Small misalignments matter more at this level, not to shame you, but to protect both you and those affected by your obedience. Grace increases precisely where responsibility grows. God does not demand more without supplying more. What He corrects, He also covers. What He exposes, He strengthens. Refinement is proof of investment, not rejection. Heaven only shapes what it intends to sustain long-term. You are stepping into rooms where your presence will shift conversations. Not because you dominate, but because truth carries weight. Some will resist that weight. Others will lean into it. Your role is not to manage reactions. It is to remain aligned. Approval is unstable currency. Obedience is not. This moment asks for internal agreement. You don't need to announce readiness, but you do need to accept it. Resistance to calling often looks like humility, but it can hide fear. True humility says yes when God speaks, even when confidence lags behind obedience. Before you move further, mark this moment with intention. In the comments, write, I will answer. This phrase is short, but it is deliberate. Writing it is not about others seeing it. It is about you acknowledging the call internally. It signifies willingness, not perfection. It says you recognize the voice and choose not to ignore it. Naming the response clarifies the decision and quiets hesitation. What happens next will stretch you, but it will not destroy you. God does not call names to abandon them. He calls to position, to protect, and to release impact. You are not being elevated for status, you are being positioned for service. Your name is being spoken where decisions are made. Your faithfulness is being recognized where outcomes are shaped. And your next steps will confirm what heaven has already decided. Answer calmly, answer honestly, answer aligned. Provision is already in motion, even if your circumstances have not caught up with the decision yet. This is one of the hardest truths to trust, because God often releases provision ahead of visibility. He sends it before you feel ready, before you feel deserving, before you feel secure. Heaven does not wait for confidence to appear, it waits for alignment to be chosen. Once alignment locks in, supply begins moving. You have been trained to associate provision with proof. You were taught to wait until resources show up before stepping forward. But God's economy works in reverse. He asks for obedience first, then reveals supply along the way. This is not manipulation, it is formation. If provision arrived before obedience, you would follow provision instead of following God. So He withholds visibility, not generosity. You may feel stretched right now, financially uncertain, emotionally taxed, mentally managing too many variables. That does not mean provision is late. It means you are early. Heaven often sends provision in layers, not lumps. Helpers appear one by one. Information arrives when needed. Strength renews daily, not annually. God gives enough for today, so trust stays active. Look back and you'll see this pattern repeating. Help showed up at the last possible moment. Insight came when you were about to quit. Relief arrived just as pressure peaked. That was not luck, it was training. God was teaching you to recognize provision even when it doesn't look like excess. Sufficiency is provision. Timing is provision. Peace in uncertainty is provision. You are also being prepared to steward provision correctly. Sudden supply without maturity can distort motives. God wants you grounded, not rushed. He wants gratitude, not entitlement. That's why provision often comes disguised as opportunity instead of currency, as connection instead of cash, as clarity instead of comfort. What you need most right now is not more, it is alignment with what already exists. Provision is not just material. Strength is provision, discernment is provision, favor is provision. You have been given access. Others do not have. You have been protected from costs others paid unnecessarily. You have been spared confusion in moments where clarity saved you years. These are invisible forms of supply that reveal God's attentiveness, as the ancient words recorded in Philippians, chapter 4, verse 19. Still echo today, my God shall supply all your need according to His riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Notice the phrasing need, not excess. God defines what sustains purpose, not what satisfies comparison. And His supply is not limited by earthly systems. It flows from a different source entirely. You may be tempted to compromise to secure provision faster, to accept help that requires misalignment, to say yes to opportunities that drain your peace. Resist that temptation. Provision that requires compromise will eventually cost more than it gives. God's provision does not require you to betray your values. It reinforces them. This season is teaching you patience without passivity. You are not being asked to sit still, you are being asked to stay aligned while moving carefully. Do what is in front of you. Take the next step, not the whole staircase. Provision meets motion more often than it meets planning. God responds to direction, not perfection. You will also notice unexpected generosity, people thinking of you without prompting, doors opening without pushing, needs being met through ordinary conversations. This is intentional. God often uses people as carriers of provision so relationship stays central. He reminds you that you are not alone, even when the path feels solitary. Provision already moving also means protection is active. God does not send you forward without covering your flanks. What you feared would collapse is being stabilized. What you worried would fail is being supported quietly. Heaven handles logistics better than anxiety ever could. As you listen, if this resonates, engage with it gently. Liking this message helps it reach others who are questioning how provision works when faith demands movement. Sharing it might answer someone's private struggle. Subscribing keeps you connected to this unfolding message stream not as a follower of a voice, but as part of a growing understanding. This is not about promotion, it is about participation. You are not behind financially, emotionally, or spiritually. You are exactly where trust is being exercised. Provision does not shout, it arrives, often quietly, often gradually, but always sufficiently for the step you are taking. Do not despise small provision. Do not overlook daily supply. God often proves his faithfulness in increments, so gratitude becomes habit. Large breakthroughs are built on consistent provision recognized early. What is coming will not overwhelm you because God is scaling provision with responsibility. You will have what you need when you need it. Not too early to inflate ego. Not too late to cause panic. Right on time to build trust. Provision is not a test you pass once it is a relationship you learn to walk in. And you are learning it well. Stay aligned, stay attentive, stay grateful. What heaven has set in motion cannot be stopped by what you cannot yet see. The cost of saying no is rarely loud at first. It does not arrive as immediate loss or visible judgment. It comes quietly, almost politely, disguised as relief. Relief from responsibility, relief from pressure, relief from having to change. Saying no often feels like rest in the moment, but over time it reveals itself as erosion. Something slowly thins, something dulls. Something that once felt alive begins to lose definition. You have already tasted this in small ways. Moments when you delayed an instruction you clearly understood. Times when you felt prompted to move, speak, or release something but chose comfort instead. Nothing dramatic happened. Life continued. That is what makes saying no so deceptive. It rarely punishes immediately. It simply postpones alignment, and postponement always carries interest. The danger of saying no is not that God stops loving you. He doesn't. The danger is that clarity fades, sensitivity dulls. What was once conviction becomes negotiable. What was once obvious becomes confusing. This is how misalignment grows, not through rebellion, but through repeated hesitation. The heart slowly learns to resist what it once responded to naturally. God speaks clearly, but he does not argue. When instruction is ignored, heaven often goes quiet, not as abandonment, but as consequence. Silence after clarity is not distance. It is respect for your choice. God honors human will even when it leads away from his best. That honor is sobering. Love that allows choice also allows loss. Saying no also affects momentum. Destiny moves in sequences. One yes unlocks the next instruction. When a yes is withheld, the sequence pauses. You may still be active, still productive, still busy but not necessarily progressing. Activity without alignment creates fatigue without fulfillment. You work harder and feel emptier. That exhaustion is not from effort, it is from resistance. You may convince yourself that waiting is wisdom. Sometimes it is, but waiting after clarity is not patience, it is avoidance. Wisdom listens, avoidance delays. The difference is subtle but crucial. One keeps the heart soft, the other trains it to harden without noticing. There is also a cost to others when you say no. Your obedience is rarely isolated. Your alignment unlocks access for people connected to you. When you hesitate, others remain stalled not because God is cruel, but because design is interconnected. This is not pressure, it is reality. You matter more than you realize, and your obedience carries more reach than you can see. The cost of saying no is cumulative. One hesitation makes the next easier. One delay makes the next feel justified. Over time, you may still believe in God, still value truth, still desire purpose, but your life no longer feels responsive. That distance creates frustration. You pray, but feel unheard. You move, but feel stuck. This is not punishment. It is misalignment. Scripture speaks plainly about this danger. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Fear often disguises itself as caution, but fear-driven no's slowly replace power with hesitation, love with self-protection, and sound judgment with overthinking. God's design for you is not paralysis. It is clarity backed by courage. Another cost of saying no is internal conflict. When your spirit knows one thing and your behavior chooses another, tension forms. You feel divided. Rest becomes shallow. Joy becomes conditional. That division is not peaceable. God designed you for alignment where belief and action reinforce each other. Saying no fractures that harmony. You may also notice increased distraction. When obedience is delayed, attention scatters. You chase substitutes for fulfillment. Noise increases. Focus weakens. This is not accidental. Purpose concentrates attention. Resistance disperses it. The mind searches for relief when the soul knows it is avoiding something necessary. Over time, saying no reshapes identity to Tamama. Not instantly, but gradually. You begin to see yourself as someone who almost moves, almost responds, almost obeys. That self-perception limits faith. You stop expecting movement because you've trained yourself to hesitate. This is one of the most expensive costs, losing confidence in your own responsiveness to God. Yet hear this clearly, recognizing the cost is mercy. Awareness is still grace. Conviction is still invitation. The door is not closed simply because you delayed, but it will not remain open forever without consequence. God is patient, but purpose has timing. And timing ignored becomes timing missed. You are not being threatened. You are being warned because you are valued. God warns what He intends to keep. He corrects what He plans to use. Indifference would be silence. Conviction is evidence of care. The cost of saying no is not that God leaves. It is that you drift. And drifting never feels dramatic until you look back and realize how far alignment moved without you. This is not condemnation. This is clarity. You still have a choice, and that choice still matters. Power will rest on your yes, not because the word itself is magical, but because agreement activates alignment. Heaven moves when the will of God meets the consent of a willing heart. For a long time, you lived near obedience close enough to understand it. close enough to admire it, but now God is inviting you into something deeper. Agreement. This is where intention becomes movement, and movement becomes authority. Your yes is not loud. It may not impress anyone around you. It may not even feel heroic. Sometimes yes is whispered through trembling lips. Sometimes it is spoken with uncertainty still clinging to it. But heaven does not require confidence to release power. It requires consent. Power rests where resistance ends. You have said yes before, but not like this. Those were yeses to survive, to endure, to remain faithful under pressure. This yes is different. This is a yes to expansion, a yes to responsibility, a yes to being seen, corrected, trusted, and used. It is easier to endure silently than to step forward visibly. And that is why this yes carries weight. When you say yes, you are not promising perfection. You are not pledging flawlessness or certainty. You are simply removing opposition from within yourself. God does not need you to be strong. He needs you to be yielded. Yielded hearts become conduits. Resistant hearts become containers that never pour. This is why power often bypasses the most gifted and rests on the most surrendered. Talent attracts attention. Surrender attracts authority. Power flows where God's will is unhindered by fear, pride, or control. Your yes clears the channel. You may fear what power will require of you. Power brings responsibility. Influence magnifies impact. Authority exposes motives. That fear is understandable. But God never releases power without grace to steward it. He does not overwhelm his servants. He equips them gradually, proportionally, wisely. Notice how clarity increases once you internally agree. Confusion begins to thin. Direction sharpens. What felt complex becomes simple. That is not coincidence. Agreement aligns perception. Resistance distorts it. When you stop arguing with God internally, you begin hearing him more clearly externally. This yes will also attract resistance, but different resistance than before. Earlier resistance tried to stop you from forming. This resistance will try to distract you from functioning. But now you are not unaware. Power brings discernment with it. You will recognize opposition faster and respond with wisdom instead of reaction. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Zechariah, chapter 4, verse 6. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts. This verse is not denying power, it is defining its source. True power does not come from effort, personality, or force. It flows from alignment with God's Spirit, and that alignment is sealed by your yes. Your yes will also unlock rest. This may surprise you. Obedience feels demanding, but resistance is exhausting. Carrying conviction without action drains the soul. Once you agree, the internal battle quiets, energy returns, focus stabilizes. Peace settles not because the path is easy, but because the heart is no longer divided. You may wonder why God waited so long to ask for this. Yes, he didn't. He's been inviting it repeatedly. But now you are capable of understanding the weight of what you are agreeing to. Earlier, your yes would have been uninformed. Now it is conscious. That makes it powerful. This yes does not isolate you, it positions you. God never empowers people to stand alone. He connects them to the right support, at the right time, in the right measure. You are not stepping into exposure without covering. You are stepping into function with backing. There is also healing attached to this yes. Old wounds that lingered because you stayed guarded will begin to loosen. Saying yes requires trust, and trust opens places fear kept sealed. God heals as he empowers. power that does not heal would destroy. So he heals first. You are not being rushed, but you are being invited to stop resisting clarity. The question is no longer, is this God you already know it is? The real question is whether you will agree before momentum passes the moment. Agreement does not guarantee comfort. It guarantees backing. God will stand behind what he authorizes. He will defend what he empowers. He will sustain what he activates. Your yes places you under divine responsibility instead of self-management. This is why hesitation feels heavier now. The cost of delay has increased because readiness has increased. What once required patience now requires response. God adjusts expectations as maturity grows. This is not pressure, it is trust. Before you move on, mark this agreement intentionally in the comments. Type 444. This number represents foundation, stability, and order. What happens when heaven's will aligns with human consent. Writing it is not ritual. It is recognition. It says, I agree, I stop resisting. I choose alignment. Naming the decision strengthens it internally and quiets the debate that drains you. Power does not fall randomly. It rests deliberately, and it rests on your yes. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready, but when you agree. Others will rise because of you. And this truth carries both honor and weight. Your obedience is not isolated, it is connective. God rarely moves through a person for that person alone. He moves through one to reach many. What you agree to releases permission for others to move, believe, heal, and step forward. This is why your journey has felt heavier than necessary. At times you were never just carrying yourself. You may not have seen the impact yet, but it has already begun. People have been watching how you endure, how you respond under pressure, how you remain steady without recognition. Your consistency has spoken quietly but clearly. Before you ever lead publicly, you have already led invisibly. And invisible leadership often produces the strongest followers. There are people who could not move until you did. Not because they lacked faith, but because they needed proof that obedience was survivable. They needed to see someone choose alignment and not be destroyed by it. Your life has been answering questions you never heard asked. Your perseverance has been permission. This is why your resistance mattered. Had you compromised, others would have justified their hesitation. Had you quit, others would have settled. But you stayed. And staying created a reference point. God uses reference points to unlock courage in others. One obedient life can dismantle generations of fear. You will notice this more clearly as time unfolds. People will approach you and say, I don't know why, but when I saw you do it, I realized I could too. They may not mention God. They may not understand the depth of what you carried, but they will recognize the effect. Influence does not always announce itself, it reveals itself in results. Raising others does not mean carrying them. That distinction matters. God did not call you to rescue everyone. He called you to model obedience clearly enough that others can choose it for themselves. You are not responsible for outcomes, you are responsible for alignment. God handles the multiplication. There will be moments when this feels overwhelming, when you realize your choices ripple farther than you expected, when responsibility feels heavier because others are watching. But remember, God would not attach others to your obedience if He had not already equipped you to carry that weight. You are not underqualified. You are prepared more deeply than you recognize. You will also need discernment. Not everyone who rises near you is meant to walk with you long term. Some are beneficiaries of your obedience, not partners in your assignment. That does not diminish their value. It clarifies boundaries. You must remain aligned to your calling, not entangled in expectations God did not assign. This season will require humility. Watching others rise because of your obedience can tempt pride if you forget the source. But it can also tempt false responsibility if you forget the limits. God alone transforms hearts. God alone calls and commissions. You are a conduit, not the source. Staying clear on that will keep your heart light. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Light does not strive to be seen, it simply functions. And in functioning, it illuminates paths others could not see before." Your obedience is light, not spotlight, not performance. Illumination. Some of those who rise because of you will surpass you in visibility. That is not failure, it is fruit. True leadership celebrates growth without competition. God measures success by multiplication, not control. If others go farther because you stayed faithful, heaven calls that victory. This will also refine your compassion. Seeing others step into freedom will heal places in you that once felt unseen. Joy multiplies when shared. Healing deepens when witnessed. God allows you to see fruit so you don't forget why obedience matters when it feels costly. There may also be grief. Some you hoped would rise will choose comfort instead. Do not internalize that. Obedience invites, it does not force. Jesus watched many walk away even after miracles. You are not responsible for who refuses light, you are responsible for carrying it clearly. This understanding reframes your past. Your pain was not wasted. Your delay was not meaningless. Your endurance was not excessive. It was necessary infrastructure for what God intended to build through you. Others could not stand where you now stand without the path you cleared by obedience. You will begin to see legacy differently. Not as reputation, but as impact. Not as memory, but as movement. God is not just shaping your future. He is shaping futures through you. That is why alignment mattered so much. A crooked foundation affects everything built on it. Stay grounded. Stay grateful. Stay obedient. Let God handle the outcomes. You were never meant to carry the weight of results, only the responsibility of response. Others will rise because you said yes. Others will believe because you stayed faithful. Others will move because you did not retreat. And when they rise, you will understand why your journey had to be exactly as it was. You won't be able to go back, not because God is cruel, but because growth changes what fits. There is a point where return is no longer possible, not due to external barriers, but because your internal framework has shifted. What once felt normal will now feel restrictive. What once felt safe will now feel shallow. This is not loss of options, it is clarity of direction. You have crossed thresholds quietly before. Moments where something ended internally long before it ended externally. This is one of those moments, only deeper. Your awareness has expanded, your discernment has sharpened. You now see consequences before they arrive. And once you see, you cannot unsee. Going back would require pretending you don't know what you now know, and that kind of denial fractures the soul. You may feel grief for what you can no longer return to. Old rhythms, old versions of yourself, old relationships that belong to a different season. That grief is real and valid. Growth always carries a cost. But grief does not mean regret, it means honor. You honor what served you by releasing it when its time is complete. There is also fear in this realization. The comfort of having an exit plan dissolves. Familiar fallback options disappear. You are being asked to trust forward motion without guarantees behind you. This can feel destabilizing, but it is actually grounding. God removes escape routes so you can walk with intention instead of hesitation. You may wonder why God doesn't allow you to keep one foot in the past just in case. It's because divided direction weakens momentum. A heart that keeps looking back cannot fully commit forward. God knows that partial obedience eventually becomes full frustration. He protects you from that by closing the door behind you gently but firmly. This does not mean your past was wrong. It means it was right for its time. Seasons are not moral judgments. They are assignments. When an assignment is complete, staying becomes disobedience even if it once was faithful. Maturity means knowing when to leave without bitterness. You will notice that old temptations feel hollow now. Old habits fail to satisfy. Old conversations repeat without depth. This is not superiority, it is transition. Your appetite has changed because your capacity has grown. God does not starve you. He weans you from what can no longer nourish you. There is also relief here, even if it comes quietly. The pressure to pretend fades. The burden of maintaining outdated versions of yourself lifts. You no longer have to negotiate with who you used to be. That chapter is closed, not erased, but completed. According to what is revealed in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verse 62, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. This is not condemnation, it is direction. Forward focus is required for fruitful work. Looking back distorts alignment. God is not threatening loss. He is protecting purpose. You are learning that obedience creates irreversibility. Once you say yes fully, neutrality disappears. You can no longer live half-engaged. That may feel intense, but it is also freeing. Clarity simplifies life. It reduces inner debate. It consolidates energy. You stop spending strength on reconsidering what God already settled. Irreversibility does not imprison you. It focuses you. When the internal debate ends, energy once spent negotiating is released into movement. You stop circling decisions and start walking them out. Direction sharpens because distraction loses leverage. What once drained you through overthinking now fuels steady, intentional progress. This is why obedience feels lighter after commitment. The weight was never the calling, it was indecision. Once neutrality disappears, peace increases. You are no longer torn between options that no longer fit. Clarity becomes a form of rest, allowing your strength to gather instead of scatter across unresolved questions. Some people will not understand this shift. They may try to pull you back with nostalgia, guilt, or comfort. Not because they are evil, but because your growth disrupts their expectations. You cannot let misunderstanding dictate direction. Explanations are optional at this stage. Alignment is not. There will be moments you wish you could go back, not to disobey, but to rest, to hide, to be unseen again. That longing is human. But remember, God does not call you forward without carrying you. Responsibility increases, but so does grace. What you lose in simplicity, you gain in purpose. This point of no return also means something powerful. You are no longer experimenting with faith. You are living it. You are no longer considering calling. You are walking in it. The internal debate has given way to internal agreement, and agreement produces stability. You are not trapped. You are committed. You are not losing freedom. You are gaining direction. You are not abandoning your past. You are honoring it by moving on. What lies ahead requires full presence. Half-hearted steps will not sustain what is coming. God knows this, and that is why return is no longer an option, not as punishment, but as protection. You won't be able to go back, and one day soon you won't want to. Your authority finally activates. not with noise, but with weight. Authority does not announce itself loudly, it settles. You feel it as a quiet certainty replacing hesitation. You speak less, but what you say carries impact. You move slower, but with direction. This is how authority arrives when it is God-given. It does not rush to prove itself. It assumes position because alignment has already been established. For a long time, you operated with permission but without authority. You were allowed to learn, to observe, to endure. Now something shifts. You are no longer merely participating, you are influencing. Decisions respond to you. Atmospheres adjust around you. Resistance changes tone. Authority alters dynamics not by force, commercial, but by presence. This authority did not come from talent or position. It came from submission, from saying yes when it cost you comfort, from staying faithful when no one was watching, from choosing obedience over explanation. Heaven grants authority to those who will not misuse it for ego. That is why it waited. Power without character destroys. Authority without humility corrupts. God protected you from that. You may notice that certain situations no longer tolerate compromise. Where you once could bend, now you cannot. That is authority refining boundaries. You are accountable to what you carry now. The margin for pretending has closed. This is not pressure, it is stewardship. Authority demands congruence between belief and behavior. You will also notice that people respond differently. Some will lean in, seeking clarity and direction. Others will resist, feeling exposed without knowing why. Authority reveals truth simply by existing. Light does not accuse darkness, it exposes it. This is why opposition sometimes intensifies when authority activates. But do not be alarmed. Resistance now confirms function, not threat. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19. Behold, I give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. This authority is not symbolic, it is operational. It does not eliminate challenge, but it limits its reach. What once overwhelmed you will now confront restraint. Authority also brings restraint to you. You will find yourself less reactive, less impulsive, less driven by emotion. Authority requires composure. God trains leaders to respond, not react. Silence becomes a tool. Timing becomes discernment. You learn when to speak and when presence alone is sufficient. This restraint is not weakness, it is mastery. Authority teaches you to govern yourself before attempting to influence others. You no longer rush to defend, explain, or prove. Emotional impulses lose control over your responses, or you pause, assess, and act with intention. This composure protects your influence. When you respond instead of react, your words carry weight, your silence carries meaning, and your presence itself becomes a stabilizing force in uncertain environments. This is also where leadership clarifies. Not everyone who walks with you can walk under your authority. That distinction matters. Authority organizes relationships. It reveals alignment. Some connections will strengthen, others will loosen naturally. This is not division, it is order. You may feel unworthy of this authority at times. That humility is healthy. But do not confuse humility with denial. Rejecting what God gives is not modesty, it is hesitation. Authority is not about superiority. It is about responsibility. God trusts you to carry influence without abusing it. With authority comes accountability. God will correct you faster now. Conviction will arrive quicker. This is not harshness, it is intimacy. Correction is a privilege reserved for those entrusted with weight. God disciplines what he depends on. He shapes what he uses. As this message resonates, take a moment to engage sincerely. If these words are helping you recognize the shift you are in, liking this message helps it reach others navigating the same activation. Sharing it may be the confirmation someone else has been waiting for. Subscribing keeps you connected to this unfolding journey not as a spectator, but as someone walking it in real time. And in the comments, write, "I accept authority." This phrase is not about ego. It is about agreement. Commenting it is a conscious acknowledgement that you will no longer shrink from responsibility God has entrusted to you. It marks the transition from preparation to function. Writing it helps settle the internal shift that has already begun. Authority will require courage. You will make decisions that are not popular. You will stand when others prefer you silent. You will choose truth over approval. But you will not stand alone. Authority backed by heaven carries covering you cannot manufacture. You are not becoming harsh. You are becoming clear. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming grounded. You are not losing compassion. You are gaining discernment. Authority is activated because the season demands it. What is coming requires leadership, stability, and truth carried without fear. God did not rush this. He prepared you thoroughly. Stand where you are placed. Speak when you are led. Remain aligned above all else. Your authority is no longer dormant. It is awake, and it will shape what happens next. This is bigger than comfort, and you are beginning to understand that deeply now. Comfort once felt like safety, but safety is not the same as purpose. Comfort preserves what is familiar. Calling demands expansion. God is not dismantling your peace, He is redefining it. Peace is no longer the absence of challenge. It is the presence of alignment, even when pressure exists. You have already noticed how certain comforts began to feel restrictive. Routines that once soothed you now irritate you. Familiar patterns no longer quiet your spirit. This is not dissatisfaction. It is growth outpacing containment. When calling expands, comfort must shrink, or it will suffocate progress. God allows discomfort to protect destiny. There were seasons when rest was obedience, when staying still was necessary. But this season is different. Movement is required. Comfort now competes with obedience. And anything that competes with obedience eventually becomes an idol if left unchecked. God does not want to remove joy, He wants to remove dependency on ease. This is why the invitation feels costly. Saying yes now requires release. Release of predictability. Release of control. Release of outcomes. You are not being asked to suffer unnecessarily. You are being asked to trust sufficiently. Trust moves you beyond what feels manageable into what requires reliance. You may feel misunderstood as you choose calling over comfort. Others may question your decisions. Some will assume you are being reckless. But obedience rarely looks logical to those who are not listening to the same voice. God does not explain Himself to spectators, He confirms Himself to participants. Choosing calling means redefining success. It is no longer measured by ease, applause, or stability. It is measured by faithfulness, alignment, and fruit that remains. This recalibration can feel disorienting, but it also liberates you from chasing validation. When success is obedience, peace becomes portable. Comfort also narrows perspective. It keeps vision small and manageable. Calling stretches vision beyond convenience into impact. You were not shaped to maintain, you were shaped to build, to influence, to establish. That requires tolerance for discomfort. Growth demands friction. You may grieve certain comforts as you release them. That grief is honest. God does not dismiss it. He honors what you surrender. But He does not allow grief to dictate direction. Calling leads, emotion follows. When emotion leads, direction fractures. This season will require courage, but not bravado. Quiet courage, the kind that wakes up and chooses obedience again without applause, the kind that keeps moving even when progress feels slow, the kind that values alignment more than ease. Heaven speaks clearly through the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. Chapter 16, verse 25. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This is not a threat, it is a principle. Protecting comfort eventually costs identity. Surrendering comfort restores it. God never removes without replacing. He exchanges lesser security for greater purpose. You are not losing yourself by choosing calling. You are finding the version of yourself that could not emerge while comfort ruled. That version is stronger, clearer, and more grounded. Comfort numbs edges, calling sharpens them. That sharper version of you does not reject gentleness, it refines it. You learn when softness heals and when firmness protects. Comfort blurred those distinctions. Calling clarifies them. You stop over-explaining, over-giving, over-tolerating. Strength and compassion begin to cooperate instead of compete. You become both kind and clear, patient yet decisive, able to love deeply without abandoning truth or self-respect in the process. Clarity also brings endurance. You no longer rely on motivation that fades with difficulty. Purpose steadies you when emotion fluctuates. Calling anchors you to meaning when results are slow. This grounded strength is not dramatic, but it is durable. It carries you through resistance, misunderstanding, and delay without eroding your identity. You remain whole while moving forward, not hardened, just deeply resolved. There will be moments you wish for simplicity, for fewer responsibilities, for quieter expectations. That desire does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you are human. Even Jesus withdrew to rest. Calling does not eliminate the need for rest, it redefines it. Rest becomes intentional, not escapist. This season will also refine your priorities. You will become more selective, more deliberate, less available to distractions. That selectivity is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You cannot carry weight if you are scattered. Choosing calling over comfort also builds legacy. Comfort ends with you. Calling multiplies beyond you. God is inviting you to participate in something that outlives convenience. That is why the cost matters. Cheap obedience produces shallow fruit. Costly obedience produces enduring impact. You are not being asked to abandon joy. You are being invited into deeper joy, the kind that comes from purpose fulfilled, not ease preserved. This joy is steadier, quieter, less dependent on circumstances. This is bigger than comfort, and you are ready. Not because it feels easy, but because alignment has matured. You can walk this path. You were shaped for it. Thursday becomes a timestamp. Not because the date itself holds power, but because awareness meets obedience in time. There are moments that divide life quietly into before and after, and this is one of them. You may not feel fireworks. There may be no dramatic announcement, yet something irreversible settles. A decision matures. Alignment stabilizes. You step forward not guessing, but knowing you cannot return to who you were. This timestamp matters because it anchors memory. In the future, when doubt tries to rewrite the story, you will remember this moment. You will remember when clarity arrived without force, when resistance loosened its grip, when your yes became settled rather than debated. God marks moments like this not to pressure you, but to strengthen you later. Memory becomes a weapon against discouragement. Thursday does not introduce something new. It reveals what was already forming. Seeds planted in obscurity break ground. Processes long hidden surface into visibility. You are not starting over, you are stepping into continuity. Everything you endured now has context. Everything you question now has placement. The narrative aligns. This is also where patience transforms into movement. You have waited. You have watched. You have held your ground through seasons where nothing external validated your faith. Now the waiting posture shifts. Stillness gives way to intentional motion, not frantic movement-focused steps. You move without scrambling because you trust the direction. Thursday becomes a reference point not only for you, but for others. One day someone will ask when things changed, and you may not explain it fully. You will simply know. Some moments are too precise to over-describe. They are carried, not advertised. God does not require you to relive them publicly for them to remain powerful. You may also notice a strange calm. Not because challenges disappear, but because internal agreement silences chaos. Fear loses its authority when direction becomes clear. Anxiety weakens when purpose stabilizes. You are no longer asking if you should move. You are asking how to steward movement well. This timestamp also seals identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone preparing to live purposefully and start living that way now. Preparation ends when agreement begins. You are no longer becoming, you are functioning. That shift is subtle, but it changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you choose. There will still be unknowns. Thursday does not answer every question, but it answers the most important one: direction. Once direction is settled, questions lose power. God rarely gives full maps, he gives next steps. And you now trust him enough to walk them. This moment also brings accountability. Once a timestamp is set, denial becomes harder. You can no longer say you didn't know. But this is not heavy, it is clarifying. Accountability protects momentum. It keeps you honest when comfort tempts you to slow down unnecessarily. You may feel both gratitude and gravity. Gratitude for how far you've come. Gravity for what lies ahead. That balance is healthy. It keeps you humble and focused. You do not rush ahead, but you also do not shrink back. Scripture reminds us in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. This is not sentimental. It is structural. God does not rush seasons, and he does not delay them arbitrarily. When the time comes, beauty emerges because alignment is complete. Thursday is not early. It is not late. It is exact. From this point forward, you will sense progress even when nothing looks dramatic. Faithfulness will register as movement. Alignment will feel like advancement. You will stop mistaking noise for momentum and calm for stagnation. When God is moving, your spirit will stay anchored, not rushed or frantic. External uncertainty will no longer dictate internal stability. You will recognize divine motion not by acceleration, but by steadiness, by the quiet confidence that you are exactly where obedience placed you, even while outcomes are still unfolding. This timestamp does not guarantee constant clarity, but it guarantees orientation. You know which way you are facing now, forward. Even when you pause facing the right direction. That alone changes outcomes. You are not stepping into perfection. You are stepping into obedience with awareness. Mistakes may still happen, but recovery will be quicker. Correction will be clearer. You will respond instead of spiral. That is maturity. Thursday becomes a quiet memorial stone in your life, not to glorify struggle, but to honor transition. It marks when endurance gave way to function, when calling moved from concept to action. You are not who you were, and you are not yet who you will fully be, but you are aligned, and alignment carries you safely forward. This timestamp will hold when emotions fluctuate. It will anchor you when voices compete. It will remind you when pressure increases. Thursday stands as proof that God finishes what He prepares, and you walked into it awake, beloved chosen one. Before you leave this moment, pause again, not in urgency, but in awareness. You didn't arrive here by accident, and you didn't stay this long without reason. Something has been unfolding quietly as you listened. Not hype, not emotion alone. Alignment. When truth meets timing, it settles rather than rushes. And if your spirit feels steady right now, that is confirmation. You've walked through 17 movements of recognition, pruning, pressure, clarity, authority, and release. This wasn't entertainment, it was orientation. You were being reminded who you are, where you are, and why this moment matters. Messages like this are not meant to be consumed quickly and forgotten. They are meant to be carried, revisited, and lived out. If this series has spoken to you, engaging with it is not about supporting a channel, it's about acknowledging resonance. When you like this message, you're not clicking a button out of habit. You're affirming that something here aligned with your spirit. When you share it, you're not promoting content, you're extending an invitation to someone else who may be standing where you once stood, confused, tired, but ready. Subscribing is not about volume or numbers. It's about continuity. It keeps you connected to messages designed for those who walk intentionally, not impulsively. Those who listen deeply, not casually. If this journey has helped you articulate what you've been sensing but couldn't name, staying connected matters, and take a moment to comment not with something elaborate, but with something honest. A sentence, a word, a declaration of recognition. Commenting anchors awareness. It turns listening into acknowledgement. It marks the moment so you can remember it later when pressure rises or clarity is tested. You are not required to do anything dramatic next. Obedience often begins quietly. Alignment shows up in daily decisions, not grand gestures. Carry what you've received with steadiness. Let it inform how you move. Speak, wait, and choose. Remember, this chosen ones are not defined by how loudly they declare destiny, but by how faithfully they walk it out. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to rush outcomes. You only need to remain aligned. Stay grounded, stay awake, stay obedient. And when you return, return not searching but continuing.